Welcome to Renegade Intellectuals! This is Worldview Building. A time to take a moment out of the complex decisions that we're making based on our assumptions and question those assumptions. Do take a seat and give silence to the latent talks that are to come. The intent is to ask, what is my worldview and where did it come from? All of us are here on the basis of the decisions that we've made. We decided to be in San Francisco on a Sunday afternoon. We decided, in many ways, on the basis of assumptions that we usually do not question. We are here to question those assumptions. My name is Jeremy. Welcome to AGI House. This is Nico, a good friend of mine. Nico, want to say a quick hi?
Yeah, nice to meet you guys. I'm super excited to go over and question pretty much everything that our thought processes about ourselves and the world around us encompass, and we'll have a bunch of fun kind of getting a little bit more intimate than usual and on a friendly hello. So yeah, thank you guys, it'll be great.
Yeah, it should be fun. So just to lay out what's gonna happen very quickly, we're gonna give a quick presentation, and the presentation will be about the concept of the worldview. There's a very powerful moment when you're able to, instead of sitting inside of your worldview, escape your perspective and see yourself from the outside. And so the hope is that for the next 2 hours, instead of acting from the body of beliefs that you're just sort of subconsciously behaving out of, you take a step backwards and take the perspective of someone who's watching your life from above or from a distance, and can ask yourself, what has been the trajectory of my belief system? And where is my belief system going? And what have the consequences of that belief system been? And what will the consequence of my future beliefs be? And from that perspective, this sort of panoptic gaze, you get the ability to modify your beliefs in a way that wouldn't be possible from the inside. Some of you may have seen Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And if you watch this movie, attain the sense that the life that you're currently living is just one small data point in this massive space of possible lives. Because the character in Everything Everywhere All at Once is constantly switching between a vast space of life timelines. One in which she's an actress and has attained global fame, one in which she's a forgotten mother of children to a reprobate husband, and the sense that her life is the only possibility feels like kind of unimaginable. So when you ask yourself about the total trajectory of your life, what was the last year like? What was the last decade like? What has my life been like to this point? In the face of this movie, it feels like the totality of your life trajectories are up to you. And if you perhaps in a moment could swap into this different timeline, everything would be different. And so that's some example that's really visceral about the force of the way that your assumptions shape your perspective. And then I guess I want to say sort of the personal backstory behind Worldview Building. So back in 2015, good lord, like 9 years ago now, I tried to write down the totality of my worldview. I don't know if you've ever tried to write down the totality of your worldview. It's a super momentous task. I started with my values as they were lived out. The distinction between lived values and idealized, intellectual abstract values is vast. So I actually went through my actual behavior and the people I actually respected personally to understand, okay, what are my values as I'm living them out, as opposed to my values as my idealized representation of myself would like me to believe about them. I wrote down the totality of my goals across the course of my life and how I defined them, what their sources and origins were, and what the impacts of having those goals have been. Goal-orientedness, where you have a clear conception of your future and you navigate towards that future, is sort of central to where you're going to go. So it's a vision for your life, right? As well as my underlying desires, incentives, and urges, the frameworks I've been thinking with. I wrote through criticisms of my worldviews. I worked through my major life failures and the origins of those failures, according to my best estimation, the way that all of the relationships that I had built had influenced that worldview. And I tried to write down a vision for humanity, for myself, and for the people immediately around me, so all of my friends. And this project basically just continued to develop over the course of my life. So after I wrote my worldview down for the first time, I was sort of stunned at what self-awareness was capable of, because currently every action and decision that I made could be mapped to a belief that was in my worldview. And so I was just like an automaton acting on this sort of written document, which had accurately described who I was and what I was doing and why I was doing it. And suddenly that felt like something that should be, amenable to a productive transformation. So I ended up building out what I called Worldview Building, which is, how do I make this worldview, which I had written down, the highest quality, most accurate, most scintillating, most filled with potential worldview as I can. And so I started modeling every single aspect of the world that had come up in my worldview. So how do I learn? How do I execute? What's the optimal way to think? What is the optimal way to build up knowledge and abstraction and representations? And I started just writing all of these documents, trying to improve the quality of my worldview. And you can see this sort of note set. So this is just one example of just like lists and lists of ideas around how conflation leads to indoctrination, around how entrepreneurship acts as the space for the funnel of the productive rebellious spirit in a capitalist economy, about how the economy transforms people's belief systems by day in, day out interaction. But this is the OG worldview building, is just an explicit model of every aspect of the world that seems relevant to long-term decision making. The next year, I tried to break my worldview. And so this is from what I call worldview breaking ideas. And I wrote down every single major idea that had demolished some part of my worldview over the course of my life history. So it opens with the noble lies. Lies in religion, lies about free will, about universal morality and ethics. A lot of these are really like deep load-bearing beliefs of mine that had suffered severe damage in the face of the philosophical books that I had read, and a lot of conversations with really brilliant friends who came up with a lot of these major worldview breaking ideas. The heuristics and biases literature, which exposed me to confirmation bias, or the sense that every single perception that I'd had was subject to a biased data collection process. And so I started attempting to sort of take Kahneman and Tversky's work and the work in behavioral economics and undo the damage. But I tried to break the worldview, and the worldview breaking was what Tal sometimes calls a view quake, but basically once you change a deep underlying assumption, there are all of these downstream consequences of that broken assumption that you have to work through, because usually when you have a worldview, it's a complex of beliefs that are deeply interacting with each other. And if you destroy a single belief at the center, you realize that the ripple effects on your other beliefs are also dramatic. So I just wanted to finish with saying there's a ton of sort of post-religious ideologies. All of these ideologies from post-structuralism, postmodernism, humanism, materialism, enlightenment, directed action, nihilism, forms of nationalism, transhumanism, and techno-utopianism. All of these are worldviews, some of them more internally consistent than others, some of them more comprehensive than others. But part of the purpose of the event is to sit outside all of these ideologies and think for ourselves what our trajectory has been and what our relationship to all of these worldviews should be. Because the intention is to sit as a filter at the intersection of powerful worldviews at a minimum, and in the ideal case, creatively generate high quality belief systems that can create unique and incredibly beneficial outcomes. So welcome to Worldview Building.
So the first task is mostly going to be around, obviously, trying to find a way to understand your own worldview, write it down, have a means of expressing it, understand, where do you context switch, what are you optimizing for, both within yourself, others, and the world around you? How do you construct that for yourself? What is a unified version of that? And then as this kind of becomes more formally constructed and you guys kind of agree with where you believe you are in your belief systems, we're going to have a secondary portion where these things are discussed with others, critiqued with others, and then the final portion in sort of a final dialectical format is the synthesis of not only how do I rectify my beliefs with, or what I think my beliefs are, with a potentially improved upon version or a more agreed upon version from what you believe they were previously to what they will be afterward, into kind of constructing the new version of your belief system and how to improve it moving forward. And so that's kind of our three-step process for the day. I hope everybody enjoys themselves, and we'll kind of embark on the writing process now. So everyone kind of have their own area, their own computer, and kind of go into a little moment of silence for how long, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so it'll be 30 minutes of deep writing about your worldview, 30 minutes of inner personal conversation and criticism that ideally is about these load-bearing beliefs, and then 30 minutes of writing a plan for the future of your worldview. And that can be a calcification of a plan that you're already living out, but the idea is to understand where you want your knowledge and belief system to go, and ask yourself, pragmatically speaking, what steps am I going to take to get my worldview to where I want it to be? Now, are there any thoughts, questions, or curiosity?
Examples? Like, can you maybe share your file with us, or how do we?
Yeah, so examples of the set of sort of load-bearing beliefs.
Yeah, just given that we don't have hours and we
Sure.
haven't read all the books.
Yeah. So I guess I will. And I'm going to do it too, to be clear. So I guess the question is really, what are the load-bearing beliefs behind my decisions? And so in my case, I'll probably write about the belief that superintelligence is one of the most important moments in human history, and that impacting superintelligence is likely to impact the sort of trajectory of human civilization, which is one of the major load-bearing beliefs behind a huge fraction of my decisions. And then people will criticize the quality of that belief. It can be refined, but because it's such a core,
So the
generator.
focus is getting one out there versus being comprehensive, right? That's the
Yeah, so the intent is to get to specific beliefs that underlie your decisions, and comprehensivity is helpful if you'd like, but it's hard to achieve in a short period. So, yeah, thank you.
Another easy way to think about it is, where Jeremy puts like a core belief is like a driving force. These things are then composed of other belief systems that go from, how traditional you are, how risk averse you are, how technologically focused you are. Do you believe more about whether it's conservationism versus like it's inverse and etc. Kind of you might have a driving force of a core belief that kind of leads your everyday life, and how do you compose that into different structures? They're like, okay, well, I'm from this background. I have an affinity towards this. I might be a two-culture kid. Which one do I usually fit within? And what parts of my personality kind of fit within this space, and what does that dictate? Why do I think what I think?
Right.
So what do you think, and then why do you think what you think? And it kind of ask it as a decomposition of itself.
Right.
And then what ideologies then how is that not cohesive? And then also, what do you truly believe that under its current constructs, and do you believe that to be a useful part of your personality and who you would like to be moving forward?
Right. Kind of like theory, corollaries.
Exactly.
evidence for corollaries.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Other
first
questions?
of all, this is awesome. It just blows me away to do this, and I want to get the backstory later. But I get the first part. I don't get the second part in terms of like where do we want our worldview to go? Because I suppose we all think that our worldview is
Yes.
the true world. And there's nowhere we want it to go. We just want it to be kind of accurate.
We have an actor-critic method, which
Yeah.
is everybody else in the room.
So partly the intention is to get the strongest counter-arguments against your worldview from the people you're working with in the second stage, and to give that to them. But I think for the purpose of the event, instead of being you, take the perspective of someone who is looking at your life, who has no emotional attachment to anything in it.
Wait, so it's in your current worldview or your historical worldview or both?
Current worldview.
Maybe
I think
built
his
up
point
of
is
previous
what changed,
worldviews.
right? Your point is what changes. That's where the worldview is, where you're saying.
No, I think I was asking, well, how do we map ourselves, our own? So I thought you said map out the worldview that you would like to have, and of course that's impossible. So what you said is instead write down.
So
what you
to
think
be
is
clear,
right.
it is write down the worldview you are currently living out.
Right.
Ideally on the basis of important decisions that you make, where to work, who to love,
Sure.
like what religion to follow, like important decisions. Take those decisions and ask what beliefs powered the decision that I made this year in the last 5 years, and that is your lived worldview as opposed to your theoretical worldview. So the intent is to write about your real worldview as you're living it out day in and day out.
And then in second step, with other people, we're going to challenge them.
Exactly. So the intent of worldview breaking is expose your worldview to the highest quality criticisms that you can find. Yeah. And ideally, try not to make it about you, if you know what I mean. So it's less egoic to sort of defend the belief system, because the most important fallacy here is really sunk costs. So once you've like made sacrifices or imposed costs on yourself and others on the basis of your beliefs, you get locked into those beliefs on the basis of the emotional attachment to that sunk cost. And by sort of sitting outside of your entire life, you can see at a minimum that you contradict yourself at different points in time. So if what you care about is yourself, then you can say, well, okay, which version of myself do I care about? And that breaks you out a little bit from the sunk costs that come out of having like sacrificed, lived and died for your worldview. Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts? Questions? Points of enhancement. Okay, wonderful. So it's going to be quiet writing for 30 minutes. Really quick.
Could you share a short template?
I sent it out over the platform.
text, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone should have gotten the text with the template. So yeah, 30 minutes of silent writing, 30 minutes of criticism, 30 minutes of building out our worldviews, and then we'll do lightning talks about how much people learned, what perspectives they have next. So 3, 2, 1, right.